I want to tell you something that took me a long time to admit out loud. There was a period, it lasted about 2 years, where I woke up every single morning with a feeling I couldn't name. It wasn't sadness exactly, it wasn't anxiety exactly. It was more like a kind of gray, like someone had turned the saturation down on my life. I had everything I was supposed to have: good relationships, work I cared about, a home, my health, mostly. By any external measure, my life was fine. And yet I would sit in my car after dropping the kids at school and just not want to go anywhere, not want to do anything, just sit there in the quiet, feeling like a stranger inside my own life. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't have the words for it. And because honestly, I thought something was fundamentally wrong with me, that other women my age had figured something out that I hadn't, that everyone else was coping and I was the only one quietly falling apart. I was wrong. And if you have ever felt even a shadow of what I just described, you need to hear what I'm about to tell you. What I experienced has a name, several names actually, and it is far, far more common than anyone talks about. Research consistently shows that women in their 40s and 50s experience the highest rates of depression of any demographic, not teenagers, not the elderly, women in midlife. Women in their 40s and 50s have the highest rates of depression of any demographic. We just don't talk about it. Anxiety disorders peak in the perimenopausal years. Rates of burnout, emotional exhaustion, and what researchers are now calling invisible load syndrome, the accumulation of unacknowledged mental and emotional labor, are higher in midlife women than in any other group. And yet, if you go to your doctor during this period and describe what you're feeling, the low mood, the anxiety, the sense of disconnection, the loss of joy in things you used to love, there is a significant chance you will be handed a prescription for antidepressants and sent home in under 10 minutes, without anyone asking about your hormones, without anyone asking about the weight of what you're carrying, without anyone asking who you are becoming. Because midlife mental health in women sits at the intersection of three things our culture is deeply uncomfortable with: mental illness, aging, and the complexity of women's inner lives. And so it goes unspoken, unexamined, untreated, or mistreated. Let's change that right now. In this video, to understand what is happening mentally and emotionally in your 40s and 50s, you need to understand that there are three distinct layers at work. And most women are navigating all three simultaneously without realizing it. Layer 1, the hormonal layer. Estrogen and progesterone don't just affect your body, they directly regulate your brain chemistry. Estrogen influences serotonin, your mood stabilizer. It influences dopamine, your motivation and pleasure chemical. It influences GABA, your natural anxiety reducer. And progesterone has a direct calming effect on the nervous system. When these hormones begin to fluctuate and decline in perimenopause, and remember, this can begin in your late 30s, the neurological effects are real, measurable, and significant. Depression, anxiety, emotional volatility, inability to experience joy, these are not character flaws, these are neurochemical events. What you are feeling is not weakness. It is your brain responding to a genuine chemical shift. You would not blame yourself for the symptoms of a thyroid condition. Layer 2, the life circumstances layer. Midlife for most women arrives as a perfect storm of external pressures. Aging parents who need care, children entering adolescence or leaving home, careers hitting ceilings or demanding more than ever, relationships under pressure, financial complexity, the body changing in ways that feel outside our control. Any one of these would be stressful. Together, they create a sustained, chronic stress load that is genuinely overwhelming and genuinely underacknowledged. Layer 3, the identity layer, and this is the one nobody talks about. In your 40s and 50s, something shifts in the deepest question you ask about yourself. Who am I? The roles that defined you, daughter, mother, professional, partner, the woman who looked a certain way, the woman who was going to do certain things, begin to loosen, some by choice, some by circumstance. And in that loosening, there is grief, real grief for versions of yourself in your life that you are leaving behind. And there is also, if you can sit with the uncertainty, the beginning of something new. But nobody warned you there would be grief. So the grief feels like failure. It isn't. I want to spend a few minutes just naming things because one of the cruelest dimensions of midlife mental health is how hard it is to describe. It doesn't always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like numbness, a blankness where feeling used to be. You used to love your garden, your friendships, your work, and now you do them on autopilot, waiting to feel something. You used to love things, now you go through the motions and wait to feel them again. It doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes midlife anxiety is a low-level, constant hum, a sense that something is wrong or about to go wrong that you can't locate or name. Hypervigilance, difficulty switching off, waking at 3 a.m. with a mind that won't stop cataloging everything you haven't done, everyone you've let down, everything that could go wrong. It sometimes looks like rage, disproportionate, frightening anger that comes from nowhere and scares you. This is one of the least discussed symptoms of perimenopausal mental health changes and one of the most isolating because women are taught from childhood that anger is not acceptable. The anger is real, it is often hormonally amplified, and it is also sometimes the appropriate response to caring too much for too long with too little acknowledgement. Sometimes the anger is not a symptom to be managed. Sometimes it is the truest thing you've felt in years, and it is pointing at something that needs to change. And it sometimes looks like invisibility, a sense of becoming smaller, less relevant, less seen in the workplace, in social spaces, sometimes even in your own home. The culture we live in does not celebrate midlife women. It tolerates them at best. And internalizing that, even partly, does something to a woman's sense of self that we rarely name for what it is, a form of grief. If you have felt any of these things, the numbness, the anxiety hum, the inexplicable rage, the invisibility, I want you to know something. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are not falling apart. You are a woman in the middle of a genuine, multi layered transformation, caring more than most people know. And your inner world is responding honestly to all of it. Let's talk briefly about what doesn't help. Because women in midlife are drowning in advice, and most of it misses the point entirely. Telling a perimenopausal woman who is chemically depressed to practice gratitude is the mental health equivalent of telling someone with a broken leg to think positive. Gratitude practices have genuine value, but they are not a treatment for hormonally driven neurochemical disruption. They are a supplement, not a solution. Antidepressants are sometimes the right tool, but they are frequently the only tool offered without any investigation of hormonal causes, without therapy, without any examination of the structural circumstances of a woman's life. Treating a hormonal depression with antidepressants alone is like putting a plaster over a wound that needs stitches. It may take the edge off, it does not address the source. The wellness industry, I say this carefully because some wellness practices are genuinely helpful, but the billion-dollar industry built around midlife women's anxiety has a vested interest in keeping you anxious. Anxious about aging, about your body, about whether you're doing enough of the right things. A woman who has made peace with herself is a poor consumer. Please spend your wellness budget wisely and with skepticism. And finally, being told to push through, to keep going, to be strong. You are strong. That has never been in doubt. But strength is not the same as silence. And pushing through without processing is not resilience. It is a delayed breakdown. Okay, here is what the research and lived experience actually supports. First, get a proper hormonal assessment. If you are between 38 and 55 and experiencing depression, anxiety, mood instability, sleep disruption, or a profound shift in your sense of self, please ask your doctor specifically about perimenopause and hormonal evaluation, not as an alternative to mental health support. Alongside it, these things coexist and compound each other, and both deserve attention. Second, therapy that fits this life stage. Not all therapy is created equal for midlife women. Look for therapists with experience in life transitions, identity work, or specifically women's midlife issues. Approaches like ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and somatic therapy have strong evidence bases for the kind of existential and emotional work that midlife calls for. CBT has its place, but if what you need is to grieve and reimagine yourself, you need more than thought restructuring. You don't just need someone to help you cope better. You need someone to help you figure out who you're becoming. That is a different kind of work. Third, reduce the load. Not by doing more, but by doing less. Midlife mental health crises are frequently crises of overextension. The most radical act of self-care available to many women in their 40s is not a spa day. It is saying no. It is letting a standard slip. It is redistributing labor that has been invisibly assigned to you for decades. This is harder than it sounds. It is also more transformative than almost anything else. Fourth, movement, specifically strength training and walking in nature. Both have robust clinical evidence for reducing depression and anxiety. Both work through different mechanisms: strength training via hormonal and neurochemical pathways, walking in nature via cortisol regulation and nervous system restoration. Neither requires a gym membership or a perfect morning routine. Both require only that you begin. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, community. Honest, specific, non-performative community with other women who are living this. Not the community where everyone posts their highlights. The community where someone says, "I haven't been okay," and is met with "me neither," and a real conversation follows. That kind of community changes things. It is, I believe, one of the most protective factors available to women in midlife. And it is why channels and spaces like this one matter. I want to end with something I wish someone had told me at the beginning of my own hard years. The identity shift of midlife, the grief of it, the disorientation, the feeling of not knowing who you are anymore is not only a loss, it is also, underneath the pain, an invitation. The roles and expectations and self-images that are loosening, many of them were never fully yours to begin with. They were assigned by family, by culture, by the particular shape of the life you fell into. And their loosening, however painful, creates space for the question, who am I actually when I'm not performing the version of myself everyone needs me to be? Research on women's well-being across the lifespan shows something that surprises people. Women in their 60s consistently report higher levels of self-acceptance, authenticity, and life satisfaction than women in their 40s. The hard years of midlife, the ones we're talking about today, are not the end of something. They are the difficult, necessary passage into something more genuinely your own. Subscribe to Prime and Power. Share this with a woman who needs to know she's not alone. Because she is out there right now, sitting in her car, thinking she's the only one, she's not. And neither are you.